Guys, thank you so much for tuning in here on the Average Voice Podcast. We are here at Harlingen Fan Convention, and we are with three legends in the DC universe right now. We actually have the trifecta because we have David Sobolov, who's a voice actor in the CW show, who plays Gorilla Grodd. Also, you have several other iterations of characters that you play throughout different franchises and stuff. We have the legend, John Wesley Shipp. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you so much. I was just telling you off camera that you're a big legend in my life, in my physical life. And we have Ray Fisher, the man, the myth, the legend, Cyborg himself from the Justice League, the Snyder Cut. Guys, welcome to the show. I want to say thank you very much for coming to the Valley, and thank you for coming to Harlingen Fan Convention. How are you guys enjoying it so far?
It's great fun, and beautiful weather. It's much cooler than I expected it.
So the Valley has a really weird representation of being super hot all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And it was. You guys actually brought the cold front in, so we have to thank you guys for bringing in the cold front.
I brought that from Jersey with me, man.
Yeah. Actually, what's a really cool thing is I have a co-host, and he's from Jersey. Yeah, Brian. We run the Average Voice podcast. We've been doing it for several years, and we talk comic books. And what an opportunity to get you three all in here. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask you, when it first came to becoming a character and when you were first introduced to all your guys' casting situation, like with the characters you were given, how was it and how much knowledge did you have of the character prior to him? So, Dave, let's get you on Gorilla Grodd.
Well, guess what? I was just literally discovered in a lobby of another gig I was doing. The casting person heard me from across the room and said, "Hey, I want you to try out for this." Apparently only 3 people tried out for Grodd.
Oh, wow.
So
I must say, you have one of the most bad A voices I've ever heard on a man. That's super amazing. Mr. Wesley, what about you?
What was the question again?
When you were first approached to play the Flash in the 90s.
I'm ashamed to say that when they talked to me about auditioning for the Flash, I said, "You mean Flash Gordon?"
Oh, of course, yeah.
Of course, I act highly insulted now. No, the Flash. But no, I got everything that I needed from Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo's treatment.
Very nice.
For CBS. And I really had to do my research when they switched me on the new show to Jay Garrick.
Yes, of course.
To figure out who the Golden Age Flash was and what made the relationship between Jay and Barry unique and special, and what made the fans appreciate that relationship.
Such an amazing show. You guys brought such an amazing show to that CW show. That's so good. Ray, what about you, man?
For me, this was a conversation that Zack Snyder and I had for a little bit. I got the opportunity to go out while they were filming Batman, Superman in Detroit, and got to test and see a bunch of cool stuff. And he and I were like geeking out the entire time, talking about all the good bits like Granny Goodness and yada yada yada. Right? When he introduced me to the character, he was like, "Hey, listen, it's based off of this run, the New 52, right?
Okay.
There's an iteration of Cyborg in that." But a lot of the emotional life that we put into the film version of Cyborg actually comes from Marv Wolfman and George Perez's original inception of Cyborg from the new Teen Titans.
Got it.
Yeah, I knew a little bit about Cyborg from the Teen Titans cartoon show.
Okay, cool.
I was like about to go into high school, I think, around the time when that came out. And Corey Payton, who's the OG, one of the OGs, right? Ernie Hudson voiced him, and Corey Payton. It was a fun show. I really loved it growing up. So that was my really only experience with that. But in digging into the comics and just chatting about it with Zach and the crew, I got a much more in-depth look and a deeper look at who Cyborg is.
So that's going to lead up to the next question. What I really wanted to ask you guys, when you guys really did your deep search into the character as actors, when did you realize that the character had a lot of pressure to build behind? Like when did you feel the weight of the characters themselves come across you?
Well, frankly, I tried to only feel the weight that Grodd felt in the moment.
Okay.
I think all of us have been doing this for a long, long time. And of course, we feel responsibility to the fans. We want to make them happy, want to be true to the show. But a lot of the superhero stuff, there's new canon that they write for whatever you're doing. And what Grodd's doing in The Flash does not match the comic books. There's some hints of it, but it's not exactly the same. So we have his own journey in there, in his own origin story.
Okay.
So, and because Grodd also has to develop intelligence as the seasons go on, he has to slowly build him.
I mean, yeah, the Gorilla Grodd story right now in the CW show, it does pull from different references throughout the comics, throughout the history of the character.
The same exact timeline as any one of those canons, I don't think.
John, in the same aspect, when you started off and you were Barry Allen back in the 90s show, and then playing Henry Allen, and then coming back as Jay Garrett, it's really weird because I was talking to someone about this the other day. You're like the concept of Hugh Jackman and Wolverine in the DC universe. Like you've played this character almost the longest. And like a lot of people they claim it's Hugh Jackman that's been the longest character. And I told them, no. John Wesley Shipp has played the Flash, or at least an iteration of the Flash. What, 30 years almost?
Well, it was 31 years ago that
There you go.
the Warner Brothers CBS version, but then I did a drive-by through Batman the Brave and the Bold where I played Professor Zoom. So I was myself, my own worst enemy, my father, my mentor, and then they brought the original Flash back on the show. But, in 1990, it was a very different experience going into a superhero show. Fortunately, we were at the cutting edge of a new way of telling these stories for adults and taking these characters seriously. So the weight that I felt was constantly humanizing Barry Allen as an ordinary guy caught in extraordinary circumstances, not a vigilante, not dark, just, wanted to really do the right thing. I always say about Barry, his heart is in the right place and his head is just trying to catch up,
It's very interesting you say that because you do have a part in the season where you play a different character, Pollux, right?
Yes,
Pollux, right? And it's supposed to be like a clone variation, or like it's supposed to be like I guess like they wanted to iterate like a kind of like a Zoom character, but the Barry Allen character you play, he's more humanized to the fact that he wants to save him, he wants to bring him back. The way that you portrayed that image of Pollux was amazing.
I love that because that was not set at the beginning, but I thought if this lab is taking various molecules and building this superhero. He wasn't a hero, but this extraordinary creation from scratch. And he grows up immediately. He would still have the emotional maturity of a child. And so we would see him searching for an identity. Of course, as soon as he meets Barry, he thinks he's found himself. But Barry's like, I don't trust this guy, and has a very adversarial relationship trying to contain him and warning Tina, which going to the end, I loved because it ends up that Pollux takes the bullet for Barry. And that whole image of sometimes the parts of ourselves that we try to push away, that we estrange. It's like, I love this saying, be careful what you ask to have removed because your defects are the flip side of your assets. So when Pollux takes the bullet and dies in Barry's arm, that was a very,
it was deep.
Moving for me as an actor.
It was super deep. It was super good. Again, Ray, this goes to you and your character, Cyborg.
I'd have to pair it just about what John said there. It's about humanizing the character. For me, a lot of the pressure gets taken off when I treat the character as if they're an actual person, right? They can't be this grander, larger than life individual because they don't believe themselves to be that, right? Cyborg is just a guy trying to get through his day. He just has very specific obstacles that are impeding him from doing that. What we view on the outside as people who love these characters, and we revere Batman for who Batman is, right? The history behind it. I think the characters that I resonate with the most, they're not the super heroic type, right? These are real people dealing with real issues, and then all the other stuff gets added on later on, right? And for me, it was a little bit easier because most of my costume, most of the Cyborg situation is added in post-production. Right? So I can go ahead and just focus on the specific reality that he's facing. And luckily, I've had a lot of great co-stars who, thankfully, were able to treat the relationship with some seriousness because I look pretty goofy in that CGI costume.
I mean,
pretending.
I mean, as an actor, it's pretty physical. I mean, in other roles too, like we everybody's pretty familiar with like the behind the scenes of like Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, like wearing this crazy thing with a giant head on his top of his head and stuff like that. So
people all the time, they go, hey, listen, you did such a great job. Like, it was so crazy. I'm like, no, the other people on the other side did a great job because I didn't have to look at me while I'm doing this. Right? Like, I don't know how they weren't more distracted by like the bouncing lights and just weird stuff going on. So
now with the way comic books are going right now, there's a lot of people that are talking about proper representation. And being that you played Cyborg as one of the most influential Black superheroes in comic book history in the DC universe, how did it feel to be the first iteration live action to be able to play that?
Well, Lee Thompson Young was actually the first live action. I'm the first movie live action. For me, great. It felt great. I think there is a lot of responsibility because Cyborg doesn't just represent Black people; he also represents people in the differently able community, and that is another level that's one needs to be cognizant of when building something like this. And I can't tell you the amount of folks that have come up and said, "Hey, listen, Cyborg is my guy because I've got a prosthetic arm." Or
That is super cool. That is super cool.
And that sort of thing. So going into it, I knew that that's the kind of pressure that comes with playing this kind of hero because I'm not a person that's differently abled, right? So making sure that you treat that situation with respect so that the character doesn't become, the character doesn't become a caricature, right? And thank my lucky stars I had Chris Terrio. I thank my lucky stars I had Zack Snyder, who treated every bit of who Cyborg was as an actual human being, someone who was three-dimensional and fleshed out, rather than it being, your jokes about, his body and stuff like that.
Yes, of course.
And I think that resonates with people.
I never got to ask, or I've never got to see anything on the subject of it, but of course there was a situation going on, not anything that's bad, but the Booyah thing. Was there a lot of people that were interested in you doing like Booyah? Because that's like Cyborg's like his motto or like his call to arms.
Yeah, well, it's a catchphrase that originated in the Teen Titans cartoon show, and I think it definitely has its place. But what we were doing with Zach's version of the film was something different. Right?
Yes,
None of the characters are using catchphrases, right? And I love every iteration of this character, but there's a time and place for each different version. So
yes, of course.
I knew it wasn't the intention initially for the catchphrase to be used when we were doing the original photography. And then when we got into reshoots, the topic came back up again, something that was brought up by, I believe, Jeff Johns at that point, who wanted to try to shoehorn it in because that was just his particular preference. And then there became a back and forth about, well, what does it mean? Why is it important? Why is it that Cyborg, the only Black character, is a person saying a catchphrase and not other characters? So you start having these kind of conversations, right? And what it's going to mean in the grand scheme of how it's all being perceived.
How it's all perceived.
Exactly. Like I said, thank Zack Snyder, thank Chris Terrio, thank the original doing the thing.
We definitely got to thank Zack Snyder because it gave Cyborg's character such more depth when the release of the Snyder Cut. I was so appreciative of it. I felt your character didn't get enough screen time in the original release. So thank God for the Snyder Cut. It was amazing, man. It was amazing. And I think what you did as the character and what Zack Snyder's vision was with the character, it really gave a lot of depth and it brought in a whole seriousness to the character, which is very needed from, of course, the different iterations that are out there. It really brought the comic book variations to seriousness of like the crisis movements. Like it brought in that depth of the character. It was very, very important.
Thank you for saying
that. Mr. Shipp, how do you feel when you were approached to do the Jay Garrett side or the Jay Garrett character? Because I know that when you first signed on, they had signed you on for Henry Allen, right? And I know that you felt that it was a good passing of the torch. Yeah, I know I saw an interview where you were talking about the window scene, right, in the prison. And of course, when I first saw it, and of course, being a fan, when I saw you come out in the first episode, I was like, yo, like, this is great. This is fantastic. They brought it back. He's his dad. Like, what a way for them to, bring you back in and bring you into the franchise and kind of, tip the hat to you being there still. Because, of course, I don't know if DC's doing this on purpose, but they're doing something that Marvel is not, which is they're making everything continuity. Where, of course, Marvel picks and chooses what it wants to be continuity in the sense of like the Netflix series or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like you'll hear the guys be like, nah, well, we're not going to use Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like that's not canon. But the DC universe is like everything. Animated, TV show from the 80s, we'll use that. Batman, Mike Keaton, yeah, we got that. We're going to use everything. How did you feel when they approached you to play Jay Garrett, the legendary, Crimson Missile?
The way they got me involved in the new iteration of the Flash was they came to me, as you said, with the character of Henry Allen. And when I learned how Jeff Johns had blown up the Allen family, my origin story was not that my father killed my mother in front of a 10-year-old me. Was wrongfully convicted of that, even though he didn't do it. That was the new origin story. So Henry had been in Iron Heights prison for 14 years when the show begins. Barry, his son, is the only one who knows that he didn't do it. And I'm like, well, that's a character I, as an actor, would want to play. And everyone is saying Jay Garrett. I'm not sure I would have wanted to go right into
that character.
playing another superhero, comparing myself to myself 24 years earlier. You know what I mean? But to come in and play Henry, who had been in prison, I knew it would carve out a very special place for me and Grant in the midst of this great big show right at the amusement park, you know, special effects, superhero. He walks into the prison, we walk into the cell, we pick up the phones, the lights go down, the music softens, and Grant and I just look at each other and make a connection and tell the truth to the best of our ability. You know,
did. It was a very
it was a very beautiful
very
scene.
work.
Yeah, very beautiful.
in that way, it was a passing of a torch that wasn't quite as on the nose as this is how you be a superhero, son. I found out accidentally that they wanted me to be Jay Garrick. I figured I'd get 1 or 2 seasons out of Henry Allen. Coming to the end of season 2, I figured, well, this is going to be it because they booked me for the last 4. And so they were fitting me for a costume, but it looked like a prison costume, but it was ripped up. And there was a big mystery. Who's the man in the iron mask?
The man in the iron mask.
And then the costume designer said, of course, you'll be fitted for the iron mask separately. And I'm like, the what? The iron what?
Yeah.
She said, oh, you don't know. I didn't tell you. I didn't tell
Whoops.
you. So then I'm sitting off camera with Jesse Martin and Grant Gustin. And they're like, did you hear what you're going to be doing next year? I said, yeah, I'm the man in the iron mask. Go figure. They went, yeah, that's all you know. And they said, you're the real Jay Garrick. I said, get out of here.
Wow, that is so cool, though.
And
That
then,
is
of course,
super
I
rad.
called Greg, and he spun the story out. And then I said, you know, take me out of it. That's just excellent channeling of fan expectation.
Yeah, the multiverse.
Bring me all the way around to the character that the fan audience wanted me to play to begin with.
That's
We've been talking about how we portray our characters, and I was very careful to not make Grodd a joke.
yeah. Okay.
He could have just been a goofy.
Yeah,
I
because
think everyone would have been really disappointed with that.
well, that's kind of like the way that they iterate the whole like King Shark method, right? King Shark being like the son of a god of the ocean and stuff like that. Like, they kind of like make him a silly character.
Mhm.
But Gorilla Grodd, like especially in the comics, is hyper intelligent. You know, he's like, he's one of the fastest man alive villain. And how does he keep up? You know what I mean? He's a big dude, man.
I tried to infuse a little bit of sadness into the character because he just never really knew where he came from. He was trying to figure that out. He doesn't really trust anybody because everybody betrays him all the time. It seems like he wants to, and then it just gets pulled out from under him. His trust in humans is just not there. And now, all of a sudden, at the end of the last episode he did, Grodd friended me. Now they're all pals again, so who knows where it's going to go.
It's gonna go. That's really, really cool. Does that mean that we might have a entrance of Gorilla Grodd coming back to the CW show?
We'll just have to find out.
Yeah, there we go. As a matter of fact, Mr. Shipp, you are actually now on a new series that's affiliated through the CW show. You're back to being Jay Garrett. You are on Stargirl, and now you're introducing the JSA.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I felt very honored to be the one to bring Stargirl into what they're calling on the CW verse. I did a podcast with a guy who said I was very against. I wanted Stargirl to be its own thing, and I did not want it to be a part of the Arrowverse. I wanted to keep them separate because people were coming down on either line of that issue. But he said you had already combined so many Earths that when they chose you to cross over and do it, he said I had to go, okay.
Yeah, you just have to make sense.
That makes sense. Okay.
You're the thread. I think I heard that one time where someone said that you're the thread of the DC universe. You're literally the person that threads it all together.
Nothing I ever expected.
That is super impressive. That is super impressive. Gentlemen, how much time do we have left? We have 5 minutes. Everybody give me 5 minutes. 10, 15? I have one question. Okay, so in my podcast, we go into deep dives into comic book philosophies too. And one of my biggest concerns, and what's really great, is that you guys are on a staple of comic that is very important, which is the DC universe, which are gods amongst men, right? The writing of those stories is very different from Marvel, where those guys are like, they try to make everybody relatable, where like anybody can be anybody character. But DC, it's like we keep these characters, like you said earlier, on a pedestal. Like there's something about them that we put up that high, and that's the staple of the comic book hero. We look at them, we put them up high, and we always try our best to reach that level. Levels that are unreachable because we don't have superpowers and whatnot, but we do our best. You know, it brings out the positivity in life. In recent times, I've told people that we've passed the silver age of comic books because vulgarity in comic books has become the new staple, where characters are killing people, they're ripping people, they're cussing, they're doing bad things. The movies like Kick-Ass, there's The Boys, there's all of this stuff that's going on. Do you feel that humanity, that our timeline, our universe in this multiverse has passed the silver age of comics, or do you still feel that there's hope that the old school Bing Bang Pow superhero is still there and it's still fashionable for people to enjoy? You get me? Like, I want to make sure that this.
I think I get you. I think for me personally, because everybody's different, right? We all have the iteration that resonates with us. For me, I'm very much of the mindset where I do like the sort of grounded superhero content that has a bit more gravitas to it, right? A lot less of the bang pow, you know,
Really?
a lot less of the old school bang pow.
Oh, okay.
Because we've had it for so long, and
Okay.
that's just my thing. I'm like, you know, we go through phases, right? That age of things may come back around again at some point. You know, you don't really know until there becomes a sort of resurgence. But for me, I'm very much of I do like the grittier sort of feel to my superheroes as it stands right now. I do feel like comic books in certain ways, they can inspire people to try to achieve a certain ideal, right? Toward a certain ideal. Or they can actually help to teach people how to deal with, you know, the regular everyday life stuff that they may or may not be going through. And the fact of the matter is our world, and I've said it before, our world is super complicated, right? And I think our heroes need to be as complicated as the world in which we live, because you have a lot of people, young and old, reading these comics.
Yes, of course.
And so for us to sort of promote the world as being this, you know, golden, shiny, pleasant, all the time place, I think it would be a disservice to kids who are looking to, you know, find some sort of path through these stories.
Excellent. Mr. Shipp?
Well, one thing I like about Jake Garrick is he came roaring out of the comics in the 40s to fight Nazis in World War II.
Yep.
So I own that part of Jake Garrick today. You know, one thing I like about Barry Allen, and I think it's been an issue and a challenge making it dramatic and bringing that particular character to the screen. It's fallen in and out of development so many times over the years, is that essentially he's not a vigilante. He's not dark. He's just a really good guy trying to do the right thing. I love that in the original Danny Bilson, Paul DeMeo treatment, as soon as he got the powers, he wanted to be rid of them. He didn't want to be a superhero. He didn't want to know from
Responsibility.
it. You know, I want to be rid of it until the motorcycle gang kills his brother.
Yeah.
And then it's on. Then he's into using the powers to avenge the death of his brother and make his father, who he's the unblessed son in that family, I won't go into it, but you know, super proud of him. But it's always was for me, once the suit came on, the lights went down, the Danny Elfman theme swelled, or Shirley, my work was done. I felt that my job was to hook people into the person so that when I went into the suit, they went with me. And we were all looking at the world from inside the suit out.
And I got to say, it's been an honor to watch you work. That's all I got to tell you. I got to let you know it's been an honor to watch you work.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. David Sobolov, your call.
Not a lot more to add than what I've said, except that I do like to stay in the moment with all my characters, like live as they live. Like when I did, forgive me for mentioning Marvel, but
No, Drax
and Guardians of the Galaxy for the animated series. I didn't really even read the scripts much. I just wanted to live as he lived as I read it. And I read it once through, just so I knew what I was doing. And pretty much the same with Grodd. Yeah. And we just take it as it comes and like a person would. Try to make him as human as I can.
Very good. Well, guys, I want to say, I think we're already finished. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for coming out on the show. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoy your time here in Harlingen. I hope you guys get to try Whataburger, because In-N-Out, it ain't got it.
That's always the controversy.
That's always a controversy. That's literally the first question I usually ask. But
it's not a DC Marvel thing. It's a Whataburger.
It's a Whataburger In-N-Out thing. That's the crossover we need, gentlemen. Again, I want to thank you guys for bringing these characters to life. You guys, out of the 7 million billion people that live in the world, have given all the comic nerds, all of us, a blessing. And like I tell people, what a time to be alive. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much. Guys, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. Anybody that's out there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys again on the next interview. Laters.